Welcome back. This week, President Donald Trump said the United States would no longer accept Nicolas Maduro as a legitimate leader of Venezuela and instead recognize the President of the National Assembly, Juan Guaido, as the country's new president. With tens of thousands of Venezuelans living in South Florida, this is very much a local story. And to help us understand it, we are fortunate to be joined by Helena, Poleo, a Venezuelan activist and longtime journalist. Helena, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's just sort of take a step back for a second. For those who are not following the story in Venezuela every day, give us an idea of what's it like in Caracas, what's it like in Venezuela right now, economically, for the people. Are there protests every day? What's going on?
Right. Well, the situation in Venezuela has been deteriorating, and this past year has reached a breaking point. Children, the elderly are dying for simply lack of food. There are no basic services. There are no medicines. The economy is disastrous. There is no work. The inflation is at almost 2 million per year. It's
2 million% a year.
I mean, it's something that you talk about and it doesn't even fit in your brain. So that is the situation in Venezuela. And so people are tired. People who used to support Chavez and who used to support Maduro have been getting so tired of living in a situation where babies are dying because of lack of basic medical care, have been getting very tired and have been taking to the streets. We have seen protests of a magnitude that we have never seen before in the streets of all over Venezuela in the past few days.
And again, for context, the notion of such level of poverty in a country that has the largest, oil reserves larger oil reserves than Saudi Arabia, should potentially be very profitable for the country. They should be doing well economically, and yet they are not.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Venezuela is an oil-rich country. It's right here in the backyard of the United States. You would think they should be doing well, but the atrocious mismanagement and just blatant corruption, rampant corruption in the government to the tune of billions of dollars that they have stolen from the Venezuelan people. That is the reason that there is no money for basic necessities such as food, medicine, electricity, and just basic things that every citizen needs in their lives.
All right, let me be heartless for a second. I can do that every once in a while. Why is this America's problem? Why should we care about it? Yes, there are tens of thousands of Venezuelans who live in this community. You're one of them. Your parents fled here as well. Your father has asylum. He was a journalist working, had a newspaper. You still have a newspaper online version, but working as a journalist in Venezuela. Mm-hmm. Why is this our problem now?
Well, we're not talking about a country that's very far away. You jump on a plane at MIA and in 2.5 hours you're in Caracas. So it's a very, very close by, right there in your backyard, right next to Colombia. And we know what the U.S. has been doing in Colombia to try to fight drug trafficking. Well, now that problem has moved on to Venezuela.
The drug traffickers have actually left Colombia, or using now Venezuela as their staging
Not
area.
only are they using Venezuela, but they're using government planes, government airports. The military has taken over, and now they are called the Cartel of the Suns because that has to do with the suns on their uniform. They're all generals. So this is a government-sponsored drug trafficking operation that is really affecting the United States. Additionally, it brings instability to the entire region, and it is a big front against the United States, causing this change in the governments in South America to oppose the United States, which is not something you want in your backyard. And thirdly, there have been camps of terrorist training found in Venezuela. This has been going on for a few years. More and more, it has become a terrorist haven where Hezbollah fighters come to train in Venezuela, and they are completely free to roam around. So you have three things that are very, very hurtful to the United States.
Let me ask you this. We should disclose, you're a Democrat. You've
right.
worked in Democratic campaigns before, but yet in our conversations, you believe the Trump administration is handling this particular instance correctly. Is that a fair statement?
That's right. That is a fair statement, and I think anybody that follows me on social media will agree that this is what I have been saying the past few days. The Venezuelan regime, dictator regime of Maduro needs a strong hand, and that is what Trump has been showing. We have spoken about sanctions before. We do not believe, I do not believe that blanket sanctions or an embargo are the way to go, but they have done targeted sanctions to the high-ranking officials within the Maduro regime who have been proven to be part of the drug trafficking that we were just speaking
about.
The
other thing that's interesting, what the Trump campaign has done here that they haven't done in other areas, is they've actually built coalitions. The number of countries that are aligned with the United States, working with them on this problem, actually it's more interesting to look at who's not supporting the U.S., which is among them Cuba, Russia, Mexico for separate reasons. But let's talk about Cuba for a section. The relationship between Venezuela and Cuba has always been interesting, and something we talked about, I've heard from other folks, the number of Cuban soldiers, Cuban military in Venezuela, that's a stunning number, isn't it? Talk about that.
Yes. Cuba has been infiltrated in the Venezuelan regime, in the Maduro, Chavez first and then Maduro regime for the past 20 years. Little by little, they have been taking over very important parts of the government, including the military and intelligence services. And this has been very, very hurtful to Venezuelan sovereignty. And so Cuba has been sending their own soldiers to thousands of soldiers to shoot at the Venezuelan protesters and teach the Venezuelan soldiers how to torture our own people, how to follow them, and how to, in general, put down rebellions, which is what the Cuban regime is known for.
There seems to be two paths here. One is either Maduro can be sort of convinced to leave, find sanctuary elsewhere. I know Guaido has offered basically amnesty if he were to just pick up and leave the country. Or the second is for the generals to turn on him, or the narco traffickers to turn on him and either kill him or force him out. What do you think is likely to happen?
Well, I believe it'll be somewhere in between. There is amnesty being discussed not only for the generals within the Venezuelan army and armed forces that help make this transition a peaceful transition, but also we're talking about the lower ranking officials, not just the generals who are in very deep with this government. We are talking about the lower ranking officials who have been showing publicly, have been showing a lot of discontent within the armed forces. And I believe that the international pressure that you spoke about, in combination with the street pressure happening right now in Venezuela, it will have an effect of Maduro one way or another, either being ousted or having to leave the country and go to a haven state that is still being searched for. None of them, as of right now, have said that he could go there.
And I feel bad, we haven't really talked about the human toll. There are human stories throughout South Florida of people who have been victimized, hurt, your family included, correct?
That's right. There are thousands of people that are living in the United States right now in very precarious situations because they were persecuted, all of their livelihood and home taken away. In our case, our newspaper, El Nuevo País, little by little was closed. The first thing that the Cuban government taught the Chavista and Maduro regime was you have to get rid of the free press. And this is what has been going on in Venezuela right now.
Horrible stories that are right here affecting so many in our own backyard. Helena, I really want to appreciate you. This is obviously the first of a series of conversations we're going to be having about Venezuela here. So I appreciate your time coming in.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right.